they paid a pretty steep price. So to start our story, we're actually going to work at the end, the year 1590, and start with a boat that looks like this. So this boat is about the size of a modern-day school bus. So not very long, not the most comfortable form of transportation, and travel on a boat like this from Plymouth, England, to here on the Outer Banks would take roughly 7 days. Now, not only is that not great, it's solely dependent on wind and ocean currents to get where it needs to go. But this boat is planning to make a little pit stop on the Outer Banks to see what happened to a group of 117 people that were left there 3 years before. Now, when they get here, things are a lot stranger than what they expected. For starters, it's really quiet. That's already not a good sign because humans are loud. And when they find the village, a palisade or a wall of sturdy timber has been built around the houses. However, the houses themselves are gone. They weren't burned down in a fire, they weren't washed away in a storm. It's like they were just taken apart and moved somewhere else. The only clues are the letters C-R-O carved into a tree, and the word Croatoan carved into one of the posts on the palisade. And that is all that was left of 117 people. Obviously, that's not a whole lot to work off of. So, to get into why this may have been the case, we're going to step back to 1583 and talk about Sir Walter Raleigh and Queen Elizabeth I. Now, we'll start with Queen Elizabeth. She was a very effective monarch in her time. And one of the reasons that she was so effective is she kept her inner circle small. So there was constant change between who was in the inner circle, who was out. And it meant that who she had with her at any given time gave her different ideas all the time. So she was constantly getting fresh ideas and fresh people rotating in. And then everybody else was just competing to be in it. When Sir Walter Raleigh made it into the Queen's inner circle in 1583, he knew that not only did he have the Queen's attention, he also had the opportunity to get favors. And what he wanted was a charter to explore the New World. Spain was in the New World at this point and enriching on their wildest dreams. England wants an in. And there's one thing they can do. They can set up a privateering base or legal piracy north of Spanish Florida and attack Spanish treasure ships using the Gulf Stream to go back to Spain. They can also potentially find their own supply of natural resources, but they have to get their foot in the door and they have to start somewhere. So Sir Walter Raleigh convinces Queen Elizabeth that this is a good idea. She grants him a charter with 2 conditions. Number 1, Sir Walter Raleigh cannot leave England. And number 2, he only has 7 years to complete his goal. For Sir Walter Raleigh, this is good enough, so he throws himself into preparations, and in 1584 he sends 2 ships with less than 100 men out to the New World. Now they arrive here in the summer. Generally, the weather's a little different than what it is today, so what would we kind of expect the weather to be like out here? Hot. Humid. Somebody a few weeks ago told me the weather was disgusting. To each their own, but definitely very different weather in comparison to what these men would have experienced in England. And these men were dressed kind of like Sir Walter Raleigh is in this portrait. Now, their clothes weren't as nice as this, but they were the same basic pieces. Linen underclothing, wool fabrics on top of it, and then armor to cover it all. So, pretty toasty. Meanwhile, the Algonquin-speaking people who lived in this area favored the summer loincloth and nothing else. Now, when we talk about Algonquin, it's actually a language group that starts up in Canada and stretches into the South United States. So there are a lot of tribes that spoke variations on this language. In this area, it was
Let's go finish yours inside.
And they were very good at doing so. They generally lived in villages of about 200 people. In the winter, they lived together in longhouses that they had. When spring hit, they spread out along the coastline and focused on major waterways. Men were in charge of the hunting and the fishing, while women were in charge of farming and foraging. This was not a group of people that merely survived. They thrived in this environment. They had complex political structure, social expectations and structure. Women in this society had a lot more power than women in London did. For example, women who lived in Croatoan and Roanoke tribes could take divorce from their husbands and keep their children in the event of a divorce. So obviously, people who are living very different lives compared to what the English are used to. But the English want the Croatoan and Roanoke tribe as their allies, specifically because the Croatoan and Roanoke are experts on this area, and the English know nothing. They need people to guide them. Meanwhile, the Croatoan and the Roanoke are interested in English trade goods, specifically metal tools. Both groups saw the benefit to being allies with one another. The problem was neither group could speak the other's language. So, after the English were here for a few weeks and essentially shown all the wonderful things the New World has to offer, 2 native men accompany them back to England. This is Manteo of the Croatoan tribe and Juan Chase of the Roanoke. Now, these 2 men leave behind their villages of 200 people and end up in London for almost a year. Now, obviously, it's a pretty big change, but not only were they living in London, they lived in Sir Walter Raleigh's house. They met Queen Elizabeth. They learned to speak English, and they taught scientists the very basics of the Algonquin language. So, while they were here, they essentially served as ambassadors to the New World, which for Sir Walter Raleigh was pretty beneficial because he's trying to fundraise for another voyage. It's great when you have people who come from the area you're trying to go to that can tell everybody how wonderful it is. So with this, Sir Walter Raleigh is able to fundraise enough to get 600 men with the Queen. Now, most of these men are soldiers or sailors, because these are the people you need to run the privateering base. But they also include an artist by the name of John White, scientist Thomas Harriot, a metallurgist, so guys who go look for gold and silver, and their new translators Manteo and Manteo. However, when they get to the Outer Banks, they meet the graveyard of the Atlantic and run their largest ship aground. This is the ship carrying all their supplies. So now, they do not have enough food for 600 men. But they just spent 70 days on the ocean to get here. So, after debating for a little bit, it was decided that 110 men will stay here, and everybody else is going to go back to England. A resupply ship will set out next spring and come out to help them, and then they can start to fight their base more seriously. So the 110 men that are here need help, and they go to the Roanoke tribe and ask for assistance. The Roanoke tribe agrees, and they start feeding the English. The English throw themselves into exploration, discovery, search for easy riches, essentially everything they could do except learning how to take care of themselves in the New World. They just relied on the Roanoke for that. Well, by the time winter hits, there's a drought, the Roanoke tribe is running out of food, and the Roanoke have also noticed that when the English visit, people get sick and then die. But it doesn't happen to the English, it only happens to the Roanoke. But when confronted, the English don't know what's going on because germs are not understood at this point. But this starts to break down the relationship between the 2 groups because understandably the Roanoke tribe are losing a lot of food and people are dying of disease, and the English are not getting enough food. So by the time spring hits, the Roanoke tribe has had enough, and they pack up and move to the mainland to get away from the English. The English really don't like this because now their food source has walked away. When they hear a rumor that the Roanoke tribe is plotting to attack them, instead of investigating this and actually finding out what's going on, they just take it at value and attack the Roanoke tribe first. During the attack, they kill the chief of the Roanoke tribe, which in native warfare was not something that you were supposed to do. So the English have just crossed a major line, and the Roanoke now only see the English as their enemies and want them all dead. However, before this happens, the English get rescued, taken back to England. Meanwhile, the resupply ship shows up a couple weeks later and finds nobody here. So they leave 15 men, a whole bunch of supplies, supplies, and hope everything works out okay. Now, meanwhile, Sir Walter Raleigh has been presented all of the reports, he's told everything that happened, and he decided, okay, we're going to have to change things a little bit, but I'm not giving up on my dream yet. So first things first, we're not going back to Roanoke Island. We're going to settle further north in the Chesapeake Bay. More room, and the natives there haven't met us yet, so we can all be friends. Number two, we're not sending soldiers and sailors this time. We're going to send families because they're less likely to start fights. And number three, we didn't find anything of value, so we're going to focus on agriculture and sending crops back to England. Now, obviously, group number three is the group that ends up being our lost colony, so it doesn't work quite the way they think it's going to. What we are going to do now is we are going to walk back to the fort, and we're going to talk a little bit about what happened next. But before we get back there, I want you all to picture what a fort looks like and what you expect to see. And when we get back to the fort, we will discuss whether or not this fort matches your expectations.